Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Film, the series where I talk to a variety of different people about film and what sparked their love for film in the first place. And today I am joined by Reece Beaumont. Reece, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, my name's Reece Beaumont. I also go by the name of Rio. I am a film critic, a podcaster, and a YouTuber. And I also run a website called The Cinematique, which is a website which has reviews, some other articles, some top 10 lists, some other very funky stuff. And yeah,
Mm.
that is kind of what I do as a whole.
Cool. And I can say, as someone who writes for the Cinematique, it is a brilliant website. You should all go check out the articles that me, Reece, and a load of other people write. It's a really good website for people starting as well. It's just a really good website for that because, like, with me and I think some other people like Matty, who I had on the last episode of this, it's just a really good website to get your foot off the ground as well for writing about film. So, the first question I have, and it's also related to the two different avenues that you have. I'm just curious to know, how did you get into both writing about film and making videos about film, and whether they kind of differed or whether you started one before the other?
Yeah, I started the videos first. I made a YouTube channel called Rio's Positive POV back in January 2020. It was a idea that I had for a while. I was trying to set up the background and trying to make everything perfect before starting. So I had the idea back in like 2018, but it took me like 2 years to actually pull the trigger and start getting into talking about film.
Mm,
I've been a film fan for decades. I'm 33 years of age, and I've been into film full time from 8, 9 years of age, and that's going to my local cinema, which doesn't exist anymore. In my youth, I
mm,
used to be in that cinema every weekend after school, and yeah, I've been a film fan for a while, and I decided that I wanted to talk about film and get involved. And basically, the big aim for me was to gain access to screeners and advanced screenings so I could see
mm,
every film as soon as possible. So that was the main reason why I got into the YouTube space and why I got into any type of reviewing at all. It's a very selfish reason.
mm,
It's solely so I can see stuff first. The writing I only started doing last year, January 2022.
mm.
Again, January, I have this very much let's kick off the year and do something different. Last year, it was the writing when I made the Cinematique website with Ben. And this year was the podcast. I started 2 podcasts at the start of the year.
Mm,
Crazy, I know. People are like, start one first, but I started 2 at the same time that
mm.
run consecutively. One, I've just had yourself on as a guest that will be
Yep.
coming out in a couple of weeks. And then the other podcast is with my friend Manuel, who
Mm,
is now an official Rotten Tomatoes approved film critic. So
yep.
congratulations to him,
We're so happy to
and
see that.
absolutely buzzing for him and everyone else that become Rotten Tomatoes approved as well.
Mm,
Love to see it. Love to see it. I think I will apply next year myself
mm,
after I've got a couple of years writing in the bank, and it'll be a little bit easier to get the accreditation. Yeah, and on that podcast we talk about the weekly releases that we've seen and also touch base on any kind of news. So most recent episode we touch base on Superman Legacy, the casting of David Corensett,
yep.
and also touch base on kind of the strikes and everything like that. So yeah, the YouTube videos came first,
Mm.
the cinematique and the writing came second, and then the podcasting came third.
Cool, cool. That's good to hear. And I definitely think what you do with the Cinematique and the podcast, I think, is genuinely really fascinating, especially the Cinematique one. Like, the different people you get on that podcast and hearing all their different experiences and their avenues and how they got into different things in the first place is just really fascinating. There's people that I knew about, there's people that I didn't know about, and it's just really fascinating to hear all of that just play out, and it's just really interesting, especially as a film person as well. It's just really interesting to hear what those different aspects and those different experiences have been like. um so in terms of the approaches for both the writing and the videos, How do you approach doing a video to a video about a film as opposed to your approach for a writing about a film?
Yeah, for sure. So my approach to videos has massively changed since 2020 when I first started.
Mm,
Obviously, we're all aware the pandemic kind of started in 2020. So when I first started the YouTube channel, new releases weren't coming out. So I made a lot of videos kind of reviewing films that I liked. So most of the reviews were
mm,
stuff that I really enjoyed. And then the pandemic kind of dwindled down. I started reviewing new releases, and I found that a lot of the new releases I was reviewing weren't that great. And Rio's positive POV turned into Rio's negative POV
mm,
and really took away from the reason why I started the YouTube channel in the first place.
mm,
So I changed that, and now I only review films on the YouTube channel that I
mm.
rate 4 stars and above.
Yep.
I've been on a little bit of a break at the moment with the YouTube stuff because I've been building other ventures, but the YouTube channel will be coming back late August, early September. I'm going to be bringing a video out which basically explains my favorite 100 films. I know you've done a similar thing on your YouTube channel that I
Yep.
really loved, and kind of sprung the idea for me to do it the other week. So I'm really looking forward to that and giving the viewers a bit of an idea about who I am as a film
Mm,
fan and what kind of stuff I like. Because I do like to think I have a very varied taste.
yeah.
It's definitely not all the similar type of films. So I'm looking forward to making that. And then I'll get back to reviewing the films that I rate 4 stars and above. And the approach changed because, again, I wanted to be more positive. I wanted to speak about films that I really loved.
Mm,
And it's always easier for me to speak, especially on camera, about stuff that I'm passionate about
mm,
rather than digging stuff out. My most viewed video is Shadow in the Cloud, which
mm.
has got 20,000 views, and it's a film that I hated. So I'm just
Yep.
slating it for 5 minutes solid. And I don't like the fact that that's my most viewed video. So that was one of the main
Mm,
reasons for the changes.
mm,
The writing, the way I go about the writing is I'll obviously watch the film. Depending on the embargo, really depends on the creative
mm.
process. Ideally, for me, I would like at least 24 hours to write an article.
Yep.
I normally bullet point what I'm going to say. So break down the points that I want to talk about, the stuff that I really like, the elements that I feel like need to be put forward, and give the reader an idea about not only what the film is about, but also what they should enjoy about it. So I'm not telling people this is what you're going to like and what you're not going to like. I'm telling you what I liked about the film and
Mm.
try and word it in a way that people can see similarities in other films they like.
Yeah.
And if people are more in tune with the story, and the story is the massive element that they look at,
Mm,
then there'll be a section on that and they say, oh, look, hold on a minute, this is not the type of film that I like. Some other people like myself, I'm really big into cinematography.
mm,
So good looking films go an extremely long way for me. So I'll always try and touch on the kind of the aesthetic of the film. And I word my reviews how I would like to read a review.
mm.
So may not be the best wording for, not for, but compared to some of the other critics who maybe had gone to university and college and studied writing and are really
Mm,
good at literature and stuff like that. I'm definitely not the best writer. I can
mm.
100% admit that. But I like to be as honest as I can.
Yeah.
And writing for my own website gives me the flexibility to say what I want, how
Mm,
I want it, and also be able to say things in a certain way. I don't know how you are and how other people are, but
mm.
I'm very expressive, and sometimes swearing and vulgar speech comes into that.
Mm,
And I feel like when you're writing for other publications, maybe the opportunity to be vulgar
mm.
and to do things in a certain way is probably not allowed.
Yeah.
For instance, I can't remember what film it was, but I know that last year I wrote a one-word review and put it out on the site because
Yeah.
that's all I had to say about the film, and I felt like that
Mm,
really could show the reader how I feel about the film and what they can expect. So yeah, I definitely feel like writing for my own site helps me express myself in the way I want to express myself.
yeah.
And I'm very big on doing my own thing, creating my own avenue, and really allowing myself and my personality to shine through.
Yeah.
And that is the main reason why I don't write for other outlets. If
Mm.
someone came to me and said, "Look, we'd love you to write an article for the outlet," they seen
Mm.
something, I would have a think about it. But more
Yeah.
time, I just want to write it for my own self,
Mm.
right? And that's kind of the approach I take with the videos and also with the writing.
Yeah. No, I think the way you approach the writing aspect is definitely something I can attest to as well. I just write however I want to write, and I don't specifically do it in a way to cater to anyone else. The stuff I write for the Cinematique or the article that I recently did for Film Hounds magazine, I just wrote it the way I wanted to, because sometimes that's the best way. And if there's a specific way you want to say it, I feel like that's just the best way. You have to. If it's the only way you can get it out, it's the only way you can get it out. And as for your YouTube channel, I will wholeheartedly admit this: your approach to just talking about films in a positive manner is, funnily enough, something. When I saw you doing it, that's something that I took on board and I adapted for my own channel as well. Because I think from 2021 onwards, I started just doing videos about films I wanted to talk about, and I think it was seeing you doing the same sort of thing around about that time that kind of made me want to do that as well. There's no, I feel like there's so many times where you talk about a meh film or a bad one, and you just kind of don't have anything to say. Whereas with a really good film that you feel passionate about, you got more to say about it. So I just thought, if I do the same thing you do, and just make it solely focused on films that are good and the films that you want people to go out their way to see, I feel like that's the best way to do it. So I will wholeheartedly admit to kind of taking that aspect from your channel and like kind of attaching it to my own thing as well.
No, that's good, mate. I 100%. If other people could do that, that'd be great because
Mm.
there's a ton, a ton of negative YouTube channels
Oh
that
yeah.
thrive on it. And I've seen some people, I don't want to name no names,
Mm.
but they're kind of not big, but they seem to be on people's tongues and Twitter fingers all the time.
Yeah.
And they seem to have just gone so deep into that rabbit hole.
Mm.
Because once you get into that talking negative about stuff and you start getting a following from talking negative, because there's
Yeah.
negativity sells, right? And
Mm.
for me, money and that kind of stuff doesn't mean anything to me, right?
Same.
I will
Yeah.
never approach anything with a monetary look in my eyes. A lot of these people do, and you see them slowly just evolve into this more vulgar creature.
Mm.
And once you're there, you ain't coming back, mate. You're not coming back. So I definitely feel like people should be, look, be very honest, be
Mm.
open with your reviews. But for the YouTube channel, for Rio's positive POV,
Yeah.
I really felt like that was the avenue that I wanted to take. And I feel like my YouTube videos have been better
Mm.
for it for sure.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you've pretty much just said. And similar to you, annoyingly, one of my most viewed videos is of this piece of crap film that I saw back in like 2016 called Bottom of the World. And it's got like a ridiculous amount of views. Like I think last time I checked it was at like 17,000. And no other video for a long period of time came close to it. And it's like that's a film I thought was crap that I haven't really needed to think about since then, and I get tons of comments on it even to this day trying to prove me wrong as to why it's actually good. And I'm like, I don't care. I forgot about the film instantly, and I hate the fact that that's like one of my most viewed videos. So I completely relate to you in that sense that like you're trying to do something else, and that just kind of sticks as like you said, negativity sells, and that just seems to be the one thing that people know you for, and it's really annoying when you're trying to do something completely different, and that's the thing that people just remember the most.
Yeah, no, I massively agree. And that goes alongside Twitter as well, because
Mm.
obviously the people that follow you and have followed you for a long time, they know what
Yeah.
you're like. So if maybe you have an aggressive tweet or like a negative tweet, maybe you're having a bad day, or maybe you just feel a certain way about a film. But
Yeah.
also people that don't follow you, if someone retweets that, the first thing they may ever see of you is negative
Oh yeah.
opinion. And they
Yeah.
may automatically just paint you in a certain way. And once someone has got an idea of what you are in their head, it's
Mm.
very hard to spin them away from that narrative. So I definitely feel like people need to be aware of what they're
Yeah.
putting into the internet. Look, I'm 33. I've been on the internet since
Yeah.
early doors, all this. I've been about, and I understand that once it's on the internet, it's there for life. So be very
Yeah.
careful what you're saying. And if you believe in something, then by all means, say what you believe in.
Mm.
Don't conform to anyone else's interests, but just remember that what goes on the internet stays on the internet.
Yeah, that is one thing I can attest to in terms of that. So yeah, if you're someone that's wanting to do a similar thing to what me and Reese do, just bear that in mind. You might say one thing just out of context one day. Just be careful with what you post, basically, whether it be video, text form. Just make sure you know what you're doing. So something you kind of touched on a little bit already, but I kind of wanted to delve a little bit further into that is, are there any specific elements to a film that you specifically take into account when either reviewing a film or recommending it to someone?
Yeah, it recommendations are hard because it depends
Mm,
of who I'm speaking to in relation to a recommendation, right?
mm,
So if I was speaking to you and we are having a chat and you were talking about films, or maybe there was a certain era or certain genre that you weren't kind of
yeah,
fluent in and you didn't have too much knowledge on, then I
mm,
would probably recommend a different film to you than I would recommend to one of my friends who I drink in the pub with
yeah.
and only ever see when we're having a beer. There's two different type of recommendations. But if we're talking what I look for in a film, I seem to be drawn to films that tell something about the human psyche and the way the brain works.
Yeah.
Very much into those type of films. If we're talking kind of technical aspects,
Mm,
cinematography is definitely one of the things that I look for,
yeah.
and the acting as well. The
Yeah.
acting is probably the main thing that I look at, and it's probably the thing that I believe I can tell good from bad the easiest.
Yeah.
As my knowledge of film and my film watching and my kind of searching of knowledge
Mm,
upgrades for film, then the cinematography, looking, the editing, stuff like that,
yeah.
my opinions can differ, and
Yeah.
I have a much more broader scale of knowing what I'm looking at. But with acting, I feel like I've got a good grasp on what's good and what's not. So the acting and the cinematography are probably the main two that I would
Mm.
say for sure.
No, I'm definitely on board with you with that one because I feel like there's some films out there which, I mean, the perfect example I have, and I know this is a film that you love as much as I do, is Burning from 2018. Like, if for me, if the cinematography and performances weren't as good as they were, I don't think it would grab me as much as well as it does. Because I think if I saw the synopsis for the film on paper, I would probably think initially that's not my cup of tea. But after watching it, the cinematography, just the whole feel of the film and the performances just kind of engross you the more the film goes on. And I definitely think there are some films like Burning, for example, that just kind of use those two things as a strength. And when they are the soul of the film, I definitely think it can heighten the experience and actually make the film just better overall because of that.
100%. I do feel like acting's one of those things that you could have the best story in the world. It
Yeah.
could look amazing,
Mm.
but if the actors are absolute dog, then the
Oh yeah.
film's not going to be any good.
Yeah.
A great actor can make a bad script believable.
Mm.
I don't think a great script could make a bad actor look good.
Mm. Yeah. No, that is very, very true. Because there are some films that look so gorgeous, and then the performance or the story just falls flat. And unfortunately, you need all three of those things to just hold it together. They're the backbone of why a film would be so good. But no, I totally agree with you in that sense. So this is a question that I like to ask everybody, and it's one that I'm always intrigued by because I get a different answer for everyone, and I'm intrigued to know why their answer is the one it is. But if you can remember, what is the very first film that you can recall that sparked your love for film in the first place?
Yeah, I don't know about sparked my love for film,
Mm,
but sparked my interest in the making of film and the way films can be different. I think the
mm,
first time I looked at a film and thought, okay, this is slightly different to what I've seen before, and that is Pulp Fiction by Quentin Tarantino.
yep.
I definitely watched it super young. I must have been like 10 or 11 when I watched it. And it's been my
Yeah.
favorite film pretty much ever since for a magnitude of reasons. But
Mm.
just the non-linear storytelling, the introduction of different character arcs that kind of cross paths with each other
Yeah.
to tell small stories that interlinked into one
Mm.
story that didn't really have a central plot. Because normally you get these films that have a non-linear storytelling, but everything meshes in together. Like Memento, for instance,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
meshes into tell one exact story.
Mm.
Where I feel like different stories are told, and it was kind of a short stories into a film, which I
Mm.
found pretty so interesting.
Mm.
And I love the acting. I thought everyone in the film is sublime.
Yeah.
The writing is just magnificent.
Mm.
The soundtrack, unbelievable. So yeah, Pulp Fiction was the film that kind of sparked my interest in the making of film and probably sent me down this route and kind of made me end up where I am. But it definitely weren't the first film I watched and was
Oh
kind
yeah.
of blown away. But it was definitely the first film I looked at and thought, okay,
Mm.
this filmmaking malarkey is a little bit different and a bit more complex than I probably thought it was in my kind of
Yeah.
early years.
Yeah. No, I can completely understand that. I think I also watched Pulp Fiction at too young an age, but I totally agree with you that when, for me, when I watched Pulp Fiction for the first time, I can't even remember what age it was, but I'd seen films like Inception and The Dark Knight and stuff like that, and they'd already sparked my love for film by that point. But then I watched Pulp Fiction and I was like, okay, you can do films this way. I didn't realize you could. And then it just, like you kind of alluded to, it just kind of opens the doors in terms of what you think is what you think a film is capable of doing. And then again, it just kind of opens the doors in terms of other films that are similar to that. And then
Mhm.
your taste grows over time, which funnily enough
100%.
moves on to the next question, which is, do you think, again, you've kind of already alluded to this, but do you think your taste in film specifically has developed over time?
So I still like the same films that I used to. I
Mm,
haven't done a complete U-turn and I'm like, I don't like Scorsese anymore. Don't
mm,
like Goodfellas, don't like The Godfather or Scarface. Those movies I used to watch in my teenage years, which is a lot of Italian gangster films, a lot of films with black leads, so kind of
yeah.
Boys in the Hood, Paid in
Mm,
Full, Shotters, films like that. I used to watch a lot of those growing up, and I still love those films.
yeah.
But my appreciation for different types of cinema, so French cinema,
Yeah.
South Korean cinema, watching films from the 50s, the 60s, black and white films,
Yeah.
silent films, a lot more feminine films. So like I just
Mm,
recently watched Barbie. Back in the day, I probably would have had no care in the world for a Barbie film, no matter how good it was. But now I appreciate the aspects of filmmaking that come with it.
mm,
And yeah, I feel like my taste has definitely changed. I definitely like a more varied type of
mm,
film now, but I've definitely still love the stuff that I used to love as well. Like, I'll go back and
mm,
watch all the multiple films that I used to watch growing up, still now.
yeah.
So yes, my taste has got more varied, but I wouldn't say it's changed, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I completely get what you're saying, because I I'm kind of similar in the sense that if you were to ask like 12-year-old me, do you want to watch this Japanese or South Korean film, I'd probably turn my nose up at it. But now I'm all for that. And personally, I think some of the best films being made today are not even in the English language. So I totally understand you in terms of broadening your horizons in that sense and the taste changing over the years, especially when it comes to like older films as well as foreign language as well, because I feel like they're both two areas that, especially younger people nowadays, I've noticed this on TikTok. Older films specifically is something that kind of gets dumped on a little bit, and I it baffles me because some of the best films ever made are like from the 70s and 60s and so on and so forth. Like someone on TikTok said that 12 Angry Men was bad because it's old, and I don't understand that. It
It's
genuinely
funny.
baffles me.
It is funny. I look one of the reasons why I like old films is because the technological advancements that we've made and the way we
Mm,
can make films nowadays is so much better.
yeah.
But when you're watching them older films, especially films in like the 40s and the
Oh
50s,
yeah, yeah.
you more focus on the cinematography, the camera
Mm,
work, the storytelling, the acting. There's so many things that you look at, and you really focus on the technical aspects. The
yeah,
stuff that nowadays we kind of, because it's so easy to do,
yeah,
we kind of bypass them a little bit. But I
yeah.
definitely feel like people should be open to all different types of cinema,
Mm,
because there's so many great films out there from different genres, different times, different eras,
yeah.
and most importantly, different countries. Get away
Yes.
from just watching stuff for the English language. Most of my favorite films over the past decade are
Mm,
not the English language. They're
yep.
predominantly South Korean, French, and
Mm,
Japanese.
yeah. No, that is true. I feel like South Korean cinema and French cinema in the last decade or so is just on another level. It's just,
Yeah,
especially people like Bong Joon Ho and Park Chan Wook. They're just, I, as someone who's like an amateur filmmaker, I can't even begin to perceive how they put their films together or how they even think of stuff in the first
yeah.
place. Like, it's just,
Bong Joon Ho with Memories of Murder and
yes,
Parasite,
yeah,
two films that are in my top 100.
yeah,
And Park Chan Wook for me is one of the top four direct. He's on my Mount Rushmore.
mm, yeah,
He's him, Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, and Kubrick. For me,
mm,
they're the four. And
yeah,
then Julia Ducournau only
mm,
got two films, but she's right up there for me already, which is
mm,
insane to think that a
yeah,
filmmaker with two films is close to cracking my kind of top echelons of filmmakers. And then
mm,
we look at someone like Celine Sciamma as well, who, in my
mm,
opinion, has made nothing but exceptional films since her
yeah.
debut.
Yeah, I totally back you on that, especially Celine's. I haven't seen either of Julia Ducournau's films. I need to see Raw and Entertain. But I definitely can back you with Celine Sciamma because the films I have seen of hers, like Portrait of a Lady on Fire and Tomboy, and even Petite Maman to an extent. So I didn't love that film as much as everyone else, but I still saw the appeal and I still appreciated a lot of aspects about it. But she is definitely one that I want to see more of, and I want to see more where her style and her filmmaking approach will take her because I feel like there's a lot of stuff she still has left to do, and I'm looking forward to seeing what she can do. Changing the subject a little bit, and consider I know this is kind of going against what both you and me practice on our channels where we try and keep it positive. This is again something this and the next question is something that I ask everybody that comes on here. What is the worst film, if you can think of one, that you've ever seen?
Yeah, so I can answer this because what I've done a couple of times on Twitter is I've
Hmm.
asked people to give me their worst film they've ever seen.
Yep.
I then make a watch list and I watch the films that people say is the worst film in the world. And
Okay.
the first time I'd done it, I watched about 35 films.
Good grief.
And the second time I'd done it, I watched about 10 because a lot of people were repeating the same stuff.
Yeah.
And there's one film that stands above the rest. And you've got some awful films that are really badly
Yeah.
made. You've got some terrible camera work, sound, terrible acting.
Yeah.
But for me, the movie that was the hardest to get through, the one that made
Mm.
me want to smash my TV on the floor, was a film called Fred the Movie.
Oh,
And
fucking hell. Yeah.
Fred the movie is supposedly, and I don't know too much information, but supposedly the guy Fred
Mm.
had a YouTube channel
Yeah.
and somehow has ended up making a film which there are multiple sequels to,
That still
and it's
baffles me.
the voice. There's just something about the guy's voice that I just hate so much that it made it the worst film. So I'd let you know what I believe are the worst films that I've personally seen,
Okay.
just out of the list that people gave me. And
Yeah.
for any of the watchers, if you have a film that you think is the worst film of all time and it's not on this list that I give, and by all means put in the comments what it is. And if I haven't seen it, I'll probably watch it. And the reason why I do that
Mm.
is I think it's very good for the palate. I
Yeah.
definitely feel like watching some awful films really helps you appreciate the good stuff.
Mm,
And some of them
100%.
are just so bad that it's okay. So some of these people would have heard of, and
Yep.
some I hope not. But Fred the movie is number one.
Yep.
Number two is a film called Birdemic,
Oh,
which is
Christ.
basically a Alfred Hitchcock The Birds ripoff.
Yep.
Number three, and all my Dragon Ball Z fans are gonna wholeheartedly agree with
I
this,
know
is
exactly what one you're gonna. Yeah.
Dragon Ball Evolution. And then the next one is another anime film, which has been turned
Mm,
into an atrocity, and it is The Last Airbender.
yep.
And the reason why Dragon Ball Evolution and The Last Airbender are so high on the list for me is because I'm such a big fan of the anime,
Yeah.
such a big fan of the manga, and honestly, brutalized it.
Yeah.
The next, I have a film that was given to me. So, Dragon Ball and The Last Airbender are two films that I knew about.
Yeah.
Planet of the Sharks is another film that I watched.
I've
And
not heard of that one.
anyone who knows me and follows me across Twitter will
Yeah.
know that I'm a big, big fan of shark films.
Mm,
I'll watch pretty much any shark film that comes out. Most of them are awful, but the good ones are amazing just because of my love for sharks.
mm,
Planet of the Sharks is 100% not one of them. One
yeah.
of the worst films I've ever seen. Number six is a film called Troll 2.
Yeah.
Troll 2, yeah. So the sequel to Troll.
Yeah.
Troll is not that bad, but Troll 2,
I've not
pathetic.
seen Troll 2, but I know the meme of the guy going like,
Pathetic.
"Oh no, they're eating her, and then they're gonna eat me." Oh my! I know that bit, but
It's
I'm not.
it's so bad on every single level. And then we have Jack and Jill, which is Adam
Oh,
Sandler playing a brother and sister,
I
a
forgot
kind
about
of
that
dot.
film.
Yeah, yeah. It's so bad. And I love Adam Sandler, but he went for
Mm,
a bad patch, and he
yeah.
probably could have had a couple of films on this list from that
Mm,
patch. Then we have Shadow in the Cloud, the film we were talking about earlier,
yeah.
the film that I just absolutely despised. And
Yeah.
then we have Cats, which is just horrifying. I love horror; it's my favorite genre, but that was
Yeah.
more horrifying than any horror film I've ever seen in my life.
Oh
And
God.
then to finish the list, I have Sausage Party, which is just an
Still not seen
atrocious
that.
film.
Oh Christ.
And they're making a sequel. Oh, it's atrocious.
Wait,
The humor is just so bad.
I didn't.
It's awful.
I didn't realize they were doing a sequel to that. Oh
I believe
Christ.
they're making a sequel, yeah. So I won't
Oh
be watching
God.
that one, that's for sure. And that's my
No.
top 10 worst films that I've ever seen.
Oh God. I mean, funnily enough, now that you go through that list, I'm looking at the list I've made on Letterboxd of like some of the worst ones I've seen. There is, funnily enough, Adam Sandler film in there. Like
Yeah,
grown ups. I really there's like two funny
there
jokes
would
in it,
be.
and the rest of it's dreadful.
So yeah, the list I've got, the films I've watched is 51 films.
Jesus.
And that ranges from films like Alabama's Ghost
Hmm.
to Hole in One,
Yeah.
Slap Her, She's French. Like, and then I got a film, the Holiday. Someone talked. So basically, there were certain films in there that, like,
Yeah.
when someone said it's the the
Hmm.
worst film of all time, someone
Hmm.
would comment and be like, "What are you talking about? That film's great." But there was a few that were just definitely like, this needs
Hmm.
to be on your list. And I think in total, I've watched 50 films that people have recommended,
Oh
and
Christ.
I don't like to do it too often because it is hard,
Hmm.
especially considering I don't watch anything in between unless it's a press screening.
Yeah.
So it is definitely not the easiest of tasks, that's for sure.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I have two films you can add to that list if you've not seen them already. Because I think I even mentioned them in the first episode I did of this with Sarah when I asked her the question. But there's a film called Samurai Cop from the 80s.
I've seen it. It's awful.
Yeah, it's so bad it's good, but it's still incredibly crap. And the other one is Food Fight.
I don't think I've seen Food Fight.
Honestly, Food Fight will make Sausage Party look like a masterpiece. The animation in Food Fight, considering it came out in 2012, looks like it's 2 decades behind. It's so bad. It's so
I'll
awful.
check it out. I
It's
will
a
check it
fever.
out for
It's a
sure.
fever dream of a film.
I'll definitely
um,
check it out.
yeah. So the moving on finally to something positive to wipe the palate clean. This is one question that I like to kind of give people a chance to kind of showcase what their taste in film is through this one question. And that is, if you were stranded on a desert island and you could only have 5 films with you, what films are you choosing and why?
Oh, so the first film would be Monty Python's Life of Brian,
Mm-hmm.
which is just going to be because I need some laughs. And honestly, I
Mm.
think every film I'm going to bring is going to be a comedy because I
Yeah.
don't really be watching a film like Alien or something like that on some desert island on your own. When it
Yeah.
gets dark and the fire goes out, if you hear
Mm.
anything rustling in the bushes, it's going to be an automatic, oh
Mm.
my God, what is that running down my leg type of situation for sure. So the first film would definitely be Monty Python's Life of Brian.
Yep.
Then I would probably go with Four Lions, which is a
That's a
British comedy.
smashing film. Yeah.
If you haven't seen Four Lions, please go watch that. It's just an unbelievable, unbelievable film.
Yeah.
So Four Lions, Monty Python's Life of Brian.
Mm.
Probably bring In Bruges, which again I
Yeah.
love In Bruges. Just a hilarious, hilarious film.
Mm.
I'd bring The Mighty Ducks, which is one of my favorite films. Enjoyment of Mighty Ducks. It got me into ice skating. I've ice skated ever since.
Mm.
It's a childhood favorite of mine, Mighty Ducks. And
Yeah.
then the fifth one would be Dazed and Confused,
Nice.
which
I
is
like.
just my ultimate feel good film.
Mm. I like that as a round off when you've got like 3 straight up comedies, a family friendly one, and then I feel like Dazed and Confused is a really nice way to wrap that up. And I do like those comedy choices. Funnily enough, you've listed 3 of like my top 3 comedies of all time.
Yeah, they
Um,
are in my that is my top three comedies. And the reason why I could only bring three and not five
mm,
is I can't just be watching comedy all day because that's all I'm
yeah.
gonna be doing is watching those on repeat until I die of starvation. So I would need to have a little bit of
Mm,
films that also make me feel good, but are not quite just full on
yeah.
100% comedy.
Yeah.
Because obviously, Dazed and Confused is funny. It's a feel good film. The Mighty Ducks as well,
Mm,
but it's just not that type of
yeah.
attacking your kind of vocal cord comedy, which the
Yeah.
other three are. They had me in stitches every time I watched them, even to this day, and I've watched all three of them
Yeah.
over double digit times.
Mm. Yeah, no, I completely understand that. And I feel like compared to the other 4, Dazed and Confused is such a laid back film that you don't necessarily have to think about, that you can kind of watch that whenever you want.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I completely understand that. Yeah, that's a really solid top 5 actually. I like all 5 of them. I've not actually seen Mighty Ducks. That's the only one on that list I've not seen, but it's one that I've heard multiple people.
I love the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
Honestly, the first and second one
Mm.
are unbelievable films. The third one is not so much, but I love the first two. They're absolutely brilliant. Brilliant.
Cool.
They bring me back to my childhood. They're brilliant, brilliant films for sure.
Nice. It's definitely one of those films from the 80s that a lot of people. It's got like a devoted core cult fan base, and I do want to
Yeah,
check it out to see what all the fuss is about, because I feel like there's a lot of films from that time period that I just kind of want to, because I wasn't like around for them or I didn't grow up with them. I want to see what everyone else is going on about. So that's definitely one
100%.
on the list. Um, so the last question I want to round off with is just a very short, simple one. Um, are there any releases in the next few months or the rest of the year that you're really looking forward to?
Yeah, and most certainly, Dune Part Two is
Mm,
by far my most anticipated film of the year, and I'll explain why. Big fan of the first film,
yep,
and I feel like because I've read the book and Dune is one of my favorite books,
yep,
that my appreciation for the first film is a lot more higher than other people's because I know what is to come.
yep.
And the second half of the book is phenomenal. So
Mm,
knowing what I got in part one, I just know that part two is just going to be so good.
mm,
It's going to have the technical aspects, but the story in part two really brings the film into a whole
Yeah.
And I feel like when part two comes about, people are going to have a greater appreciation for part one as well. You
Yeah.
know, Dune Part Two is 100% that film for me, which I'm
Mm.
looking forward to the most.
Yeah.
At the time of recording, I'm going to watch Oppenheimer tomorrow, which is also
Yeah.
top two, and then David Fincher's The Killer as well, kind of rounds off my top three. I would also say Miyazaki's How Do You Live,
Yeah.
but I don't know if that's coming out in the UK this year, so
Mm.
I'll hold I'll hold off on that one for the moment.
Yeah. There seems to be a tendency whenever Studio Ghibli or Miyazaki makes a film, we always get it in like January or February the next year.
Yeah.
So worst case scenario, I feel like that's going to be what we end up getting.
Yeah, probably be a 2024 release, that one, but I think. But if it does come out this year, brilliant. I've
Mm.
heard nothing about it. I don't
Yeah.
need to hear anything about it.
Mm.
Tell me the filmmaker. Oh,
Yeah.
Miyazaki,
Mm.
day one, I'm there.
Yeah.
I didn't need to see a post or anything. That's just,
Mm.
there's only certain filmmakers that can do that, and he's one of them. His
Mm.
Studio Ghibli films are just
Yeah.
so much emotion to them. They're such heartfelt films,
Mm.
and there's just I don't know. I feel when every time I watch one of them, even about a completely different point in my life, I take a completely different thing from it.
Mm.
They're so good for that, and I think everyone has different reasons why they love them films.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm buzzing for that one. So they would be the ones that I'm kind of most
Mm.
anticipating for sure. And then I'm kind of intrigued by Wonka. I don't know if the
Yeah.
trailer made me more intrigued or
Mm.
less, but seeing Hugh Grant as an Oompa Loompa stuck in a jar of prison was just so
Yeah.
good. And
Yeah.
that was absolutely brilliant. I love that.
Mm.
And then somebody, I don't know if anyone knows who Hasbulla is, but someone commented, if I ever catch Hasbulla, that's what I'm going to do to him. And I also found that absolutely hilarious because I love Hasbulla. But that was, that had me in stitches when somebody said that. But yeah,
Oh
no,
God.
I'm intrigued by Wonka. Just trying to
Mm.
think if there's any other films coming out this year that I'm kind of massively
Uh,
buzzing for. Oh, Jesus Christ. Killers of the Flower Moon,
yeah.
Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
How could I nearly forget that one? That is also one of, I think that's number two actually for
Yeah.
me. Doom Part Two, and then Killers of the Flower Moon, and then The
Mm.
Killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scorsese, in it.
Yeah.
It's very hard not to be absolutely hyped for a Scorsese film.
Mm.
Um,
I feel
love
like
the cast. Love the cast.
oh yeah, yeah. The cast in that film looks incredible, and especially the reviews coming out of Cannes, like it was just nothing but positives, and it
The
just made me
trailers
more
look
hyped for
so
it.
good,
Oh yeah, that trailer is
so
so good.
good. Both of
Yeah.
them are just unbelievable, and the cast is just so sick.
Mm. Yeah, I
De
feel like
Niro actually looks like he's acting again. It's insane. I haven't seen De
yeah.
Niro act in a film in years. Since The Irishman 2019 was the last time I
Yeah.
seen him actually act in a film.
Mm.
Just Scorsese, man, he just brings it out of De Niro. Unbelievable. I can't
Yeah.
wait for that film.
Yeah.
Yeah, some
I'm
good
so
films
looking
still to
forward to
come.
that. Mm. Yeah, I feel like so far this year it started off a bit quiet, and then in the last couple months or weeks where we've had like Mission Impossible, Across the Spider Verse,
Yeah,
Barbie, Oppenheimer, like it's suddenly become like a burst of really great films, and yet I think a lot of people, and like you just listing off them films now has reminded me, just like Christ, there's still some big hitters left to
yeah.
come, that are all
When
like
does this episode come out?
so from when we're recording this episode should be out in like a week or so's time, roughly.
Cool. So when this episode comes out, there's going to be a horror film out, an Australian horror film called Talk to Me.
Hmm.
It's a film that I seen yesterday in an advanced screening. If you like horror, you are going to love this film. It's 95 minutes.
Hmm.
There's zero fluff in this film. It has an unbelievable young cast, and then Miranda Otto, who is just fantastic in everything. There's no cheap scares, no cheap jumps. There's no characters in this film just
Yep.
solely for the purpose of being a sacrificial lamb, right?
Mm.
Every character who dies or potentially doesn't die does so to advance the story and make sense in the lore that is created. Because every time I find with supernatural films, sometimes the filmmakers forget the lore that they've created themselves,
Mm.
and the deaths or the way that it happens just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
This was a very tight film, and the first, I believe they're twins, the
Yeah, I think so.
filmmakers.
Yeah.
First film, brilliant,
Mm.
brilliant film. So when this is out, go and watch Talk to Me. Support horror in the cinema because we need
Mm.
more horror, man.
Yeah.
Brilliant film.
Talk to Me was one of those films where, like, when I first heard about it, I didn't really give it much thought, but then I started hearing buzz from Sundance or South by Southwest, wherever it premiered,
Yeah,
and then the buzz just kept getting more and more and more, and I was like, okay. And then I think I saw the trailer, and I was like, okay, I think I'm on board with this, and you've pretty much just sold me alone on the film. And I think I saw some reactions from a couple other people on Twitter today, and it's one that I'm now immediately like, I need to see this when I can. Amongst
so
the
good.
busy weekend of Oppenheimer and Barbie and
Yeah,
all
so
that
that's the
good
thing.
stuff.
Barbenheimer this weekend, and then hopefully people get their fill of Greta
Mm,
Gerwig and Christopher Nolan,
yeah.
and go and support horror because obviously
Mm,
with the strikes and everything is going on at the moment, there's no films kind of in development. So
yeah.
let's support the ones that are out. Let's let the studios know we want films and how much
Mm,
we care and how much we go to the cinema, and maybe they'll pay the actors and the writers what they're worth. So
yeah.
yeah, I'm definitely endorsing Talk to Me for sure.
Yeah. No. Pretty much just 100% agree with everything you've just said there. So unfortunately, that means we come to the end of this episode. Reece, feel free to now just plug everything that you want and let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, so if you follow me on Twitter at Rio's Positive POV, Rio's is REOS, Positive POV, the normal way. I have a link tree on my Twitter, which will bring you to both podcasts I have. The podcast that you just came on, the Cinematique podcast, is a podcast where I interview people that are working within the film space, whether it's paid work or unpaid work, from actors to filmmakers to publicists to film critics. And the whole point of that podcast is basically trying to give information to people that want to get involved in the industry, maybe don't know how to go about it. And it's also a very selfish podcast because I take loads of information for myself and utilize it in the work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
I have a second podcast which also comes out on a weekly basis every Tuesday with me and my friend Manuel, called R&M, a conversation on cinema podcast, where we discuss weekly releases and news. Again, both of those you can find the links to on my link tree. My YouTube channel, Rio's Positive POV, there's also a link there. And then the Cinematique website, where you can find all my reviews, articles, and also articles from Aaron and articles from Matty and loads of other writers. And if you are a budding writer who doesn't feel like you have an avenue to write, hit me up on Twitter and we can have a talk about potentially you writing for the site. And yeah, we're always happy to give new writers a chance to get their work published and get their work seen by more eyes. Obviously, it's not the biggest site, but I do feel like from the kind of audience that I have through Twitter and the follow account and the subscribers on YouTube and you have a
Mm,
podcast, that we can get eyes onto your writing for a first time writer.
mm.
So give me a shout, hit me up on Twitter. And yeah, any questions you've got in relation to anything that I just said, hit me up on Twitter. And also, if you have any YouTube channels or podcasts you'd like me to come on and do a guest interview or talk about anything to do with film at all, then I'm more than happy to do so. Um, and yeah, that's kind of what I've got going on at the moment. Next thing coming up, the big old top 100 films, which I stole from you. So that's what I've got coming up.
Yeah, cool. That's great. I, exactly what Reece said. If you're looking for somewhere to start writing, as someone who went straight to Reece to start posting stuff to the Cinematique, I cannot recommend it enough because it is the best place to start, and you definitely develop your own skills as you go along. Because I think when I started writing stuff for the Cinematique, I didn't quite know what I was doing, but I found my voice, I found my style, and it's just so helpful for getting your foot in the door in terms of needing something to start with. and it's just really helpful. So thank you very much for watching another episode of For the Love of Film. Thank you, Reece, for being on. It's been brilliant to talk to you. And if you yourself fancy coming on the series in the future, then let me know on Twitter, Instagram. All the social media places will be in the description and linked on my channel as well. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.